back, everybody, to another episode of Traversing Life with TK. And today we're going to take a deep dive into perspective. Now, a lot of people talk about how your perspective can change everything, but not a lot of people really talk about, what is perspective and how perspective actually colors and changes, how you see the world. The other night, I was really starting to think about it. And when I truly started to think about, okay, what is your perspective and how do you perceive things? I realized we perceive things in such a limited fashion. And I know people say, "Oh, I have a open mindset on things and all that." That's all well and cool. You're still viewing things from such a limited perspective because you're still just going off of how you want to perceive it. When you truly start thinking about perception and how you can perceive things, you got to realize that everything's made of energy, and energy is expressed through wavelengths, frequencies, spectrums, and in all different ways because everything is made up of energy. So when we're looking at something physically, we're only looking at it from the spectrums that we can see with our physical eyes. We're only perceiving it from the spectrums and frequencies that we can hear or that we pick up on in our immediate environment. We're not seeing all the different perspectives. We're not seeing all the different frequencies, all the different wavelengths that that particular item or that particular person or whatever you're looking at is actually looking at. Because if you start to truly expand your perception and stop being limited, and I say this because we are truly only seeing that one little pixel of the picture. It's like when you zoom in on the picture and you're only looking at one little tiny part of it. But if you start to zoom out, you start to see the fuller picture. You start to see more perspective of it. I'll give you an example. So when our relationships, the people that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, our perception of them changes based off of seeing them interact in different situations. So we're able to see different sides of them. Those are like the different spectrums, the different wavelengths that you might not see because you only interact with them on a certain level. You only interact with them at certain times. But then over time, you see them in different situations. So you're able to get a wider perspective of it. That's the same thing that happens with pretty much everything. But instead of developing it over time and seeing how they react and stuff, you can you can see all this by opening up your first or third eye or however you want to call it. You can actually start to perceive the different spectrums, perceive the different wavelengths and frequencies that are going on, and truly start getting a full picture of every object and everything that's around you, and seeing that everything has multiple facets and has multiple sides and are interacting with things in different ways. We can take this even deeper when you talk about the protons, neutrons, electrons, and the atoms and how they interact with each other in order to form different compounds. Well, thinking about this process, but on all levels. So it reacts a certain way when it reacts to this frequency. What about when it's on different frequencies? What happens when you look at it from the different spectrums? It interacts differently. It's behaving differently. There's different things that are going on, but they're going on at the exact same time. This is like how when people perceive and they talk about like parallel realities or multiple realities and stuff, you're not understanding that you're just seeing all the different spectrums because all that's happening right now. People talk about, oh, everything's happening in the now. There's no past, there's no future. Everything's happening right now because you can perceive all that right now because it's just different spectrums, different frequencies, different wavelengths that you're tapping into that you're able to perceive. And by doing this, some people take it too far. And that's when you say, oh, you went down the rabbit hole too much because you start looking, you start to, instead of just taking the world for what it is, now you're taking the world as saying everything is false and everything's been lied. You've been lied to this whole time. But instead of just accepting the world for what it is, and you start to hold on to certain pixels, like I was saying in the beginning, you start to hold on to certain frequencies and wavelengths, and then that starts to color your perspective again, making you zoom in and lose true focus because you don't even get to see the full picture. You're so zoomed in on one little tiny piece that you're missing out on so much other things. And that's not to say that you can't have a fulfilling life and enjoy yourself and learn so much, but being zoomed in on that one perspective, on that one wavelength, on that one frequency, because there's still so much to learn, so much to experience, even in that one little frequency, even in that one little wavelength, that one little pixel of that picture. There's so much detail, so much data, if you will, that it can take a lot in order to just be at peace with what it is. So when you start adding in other perspectives, other wavelengths, other frequencies, other information from all these different pixels that are going on, sometimes it can get overwhelming. You have to realize that just because you see and you perceive all of this, there's always going to be a constant flux of information flowing through your mind. It's what are you actually focusing in on? Again, your perspective. What are you trying to perceive? What are you going to focus in on at that one particular point in time? Because you can focus in on each of those things and learn about it without it being overwhelming. This is where you get people who are specialists in certain fields because they've learned a lot of the different spectrums and frequencies and wavelengths of that particular thing that they've studied. So now they have a very expansive knowledge on it. Now, a lot of people do it over time. That's what I'm saying. Is don't rush these things. Take it as it will, because what's meant for you is going to be for you. What's not meant for you, you'll never have. So when you focus in and you're doing your research, inner search, outer search, and all that different stuff on anything, take your time so that you fully get a grasp of it. And I mean the grasp of it where you at. And if you've been watching my videos and things, you'll notice that I've said this before, that your perspective and your understanding, the understanding and overstanding of things are going to constantly change because you're constantly breaking through to different levels of yourself. You're constantly seeing different aspects of yourself. It's going to be ever changing, ever flowing, ever evolving. So when you're researching something, you gotta make sure that you take the time to where you got a full grasp of it, of where you are right now, before you try to move on to something else, because that's where you can get confused. I know people are like, "Oh, well, wouldn't that be limiting your viewpoint of the world and all that?" Well, when you truly go to take a full grasp of a subject, you're gonna know it so much, so inside and out, that it starts to pertain to everything that else is going on. Because again, everything's energy. And while energy is ever changing, ever flowing, it's still energy. Understanding how energy works, how it interacts with things will start to give you a perspective on almost everything because it's similar interactions. All you're doing is watching it in a different form. It's still the energy that, like I said, if you're focusing in on this one frequency, on this one wavelength, if you focus in on that, then yeah, you can perceive it from all different aspects. Let's take, I'm a chef. I love cooking. I relate cooking to all different aspects of my life. And when I cook, I learn about different aspects of my life. But I'm focusing in on cooking. I'm learning more about cooking, honing my craft of cooking. But at the same time, I'm learning about how energy interacts with everything else as well. It doesn't matter what you do, energy is the same. Energy is energy. And it's gonna have certain truths to it. That's what I mean about accepting things for what it is. So taking it back again to where I started about how once you start to zoom out and see more of the picture and how that information can get overwhelming, all you have to do is relate it to whatever energy and the interactions it's already been. Now, there might be different little changes and different subtleties and different, you know, different things about it in that frequency. But that's the beauty of this journey. You get to learn so much, you get to interact so much. There's so much to do here. And everybody focuses in on one little small aspect of things and doesn't even realize how much more there is out here. And that's just in normal everyday life. Because a lot of people think about, okay, well, we're gonna live life to the fullest. We go out here and we do some extreme sports, we do this adrenaline or whatever. Let's even say your dreams. That's a whole nother aspect of your reality. That's a whole nother aspect that you haven't even tapped into. And maybe you have, but have you tapped into it to its fullest potential? Again, not just looking at it from that one singular wavelength, that one singular frequency, like actually tapping in to it from multiple perspectives, from multiple frequencies, from multiple angles. Because once you start doing that, that's when you start to get the bigger picture. Like I said, that's another pixel of this reality. When people say, oh, we see spirits and stuff, another pixel of this reality. There's people who have, what do they call it? Synesthesia, where they might see colors, they might taste sounds, or they hear um, smells and stuff. They're experiencing the world from different wavelengths, different frequencies, and experiencing energy and how it interacts in different ways. And it's not overwhelming, it's natural to them because they take the world as what it is. That's what you have to do as you're going through this world, as you're looking at your perspective and you're perceiving the things around you, and you start to expand. Because no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you're going to start to want to expand your perspective, expand your knowledge, what you understand, overstand. You try to grow because you're learning different aspects of yourself. Because again, energy is energy. So as you learn more about your energy, you also learn about how the energy interacts in whatever frequency wavelength, however you want to put it, dimension. There's multiple ways to put this. Realities, but however you're experiencing it, there's multiple ways. And once you start to understand and truly incorporate that wider picture, that wider perspective of things, changes how you interact because now you're noticing the changes on more levels than you were before. I'm not saying that there's a point where you can understand things on all levels because that takes a lot. And that's when people are like, oh yeah, I had an experience that was so overwhelming and I like it scares people. And sometimes they forget it. Sometimes they remember it, but they don't want to. They block out things again, focus in on one small part of it. They don't even realize that they're missing out on the bigger picture that they experienced, that they already experienced. Um, there's the Roots. Yeah, they make that album and then you shoot your cousin. And I forget the name of the song. It said, people ask for God till the day He comes. They see God's face and they turn around and run. So like, be careful what you ask for. You want to see divinity. You want to see what source does, and you want to get that truth. But then when you see it, you get scared. You run away. You run away from the truth that was showed to you. That God, source, creation, whatever you want to put it, showed to you, and you ran away from it. This happens to people all the time. People have these experiences. Sometimes people say out of body experiences. Sometimes people have a dream that was so real and they feel like they learned so much from it that they were like, I was scared when they woke up because of the reality shift, because of the experience of going from having that knowledge or having that perspective to boom, not going back. It's like going from ultra, what is it? What they got out now? 4K or saying TV, like whatever the highest definition you can get. They're going back to back in the day, where we just had black and white. Wasn't picture quality wasn't that great and everything. It's like making that transition immediately. It can be jarring. It can be disconcerting. It can make you question a lot of things. But in those questions, in those experiences, that's where you learn so much. Again, how you perceive the situation instead of taking the situation with fear. Because again, fear is also just one small pixel of the whole thing. And fear has multiple perspectives. Fear is on multiple wavelengths, multiple frequencies. So just because you understand fear for what it is on this frequency, on this wavelength, that fear could be doing so much other stuff. I've been listening to a lot of affirmation music and a lot of different stuff. There's this lady, Carly Pearl. Uh, I want to say it's her song Alchemist. And it comes in, it's like, what if all the demons in our life we're just trying to open up our minds? And she also talks about like, what if saying, oh no, that's the name of pronoia. A pronoia. Saying uh the belief that the world conspires, everything conspires in your favor, and makes you think about things like, hey, like not even like if everything conspires in your favor or works in your favor or anything like that. Oh, just a second, get some water. But if all these different experiences that you had, all these different perspectives that you had, you could see more of the bigger picture. You're meant to see maybe something dark, so you compare it to the light or appreciate the light. Maybe you saw something light to appreciate the dark. Learning more and getting more of these perspectives is what actually makes you more. I don't want to say whole because that's nah, nah. I ain't with that. It makes you more aware of the bigger picture of the whole and not afraid to explore it in everything. I'm not saying to do this with everything all at once because, again, that could be overwhelming. That could definitely change your perspective on things and how the world works. I'm saying you want to start with, getting your perspective to the point where maybe on one thing, one aspect, one item, one object, you don't just look at it as, okay, let's take an incense holder. Let's say you look at the incense holder from the one perspective. Oh, it's just there to hold my incense and burn that. Another way for it's there to carry the energy of the item that you're burning into another plane. That's where a lot of look like boats. A lot of them have those little creases because say it's a vessel. Say for the ashes afterwards because it's making the transformation, taking it somewhere else. That's left behind. The rest of it is for your song. But hey, that's just one thing. Same thing with the instant holder. Start looking at it from another perspective. You know, it's also there to help hold that energy. No, on a physical plane, we say it's to catch the ashes, to keep the incense stick and everything there, but it's to hold that energy in one spot, focus it. There's all kinds of ways you can look at things. There's multiple perspectives, multiple wavelengths, multiple frequencies of everything, every object, and that's what I'm saying. Start with something small, something that maybe you have already started to notice a bunch of different uses for or much different perspectives on, and then try to widen it from there. And to do this, you have to form connections with different objects. It's not even really like connections because I know people are like, oh, no, what if this object, say, isn't good or whatever, has bad energy? No, what I'm saying by connection, I mean, is you have to observe, observe it to the point where now your observations don't deal with all the little details anymore because all those little details now aren't even important because you're taking a step back from those little details now. Now you're just looking at, some of the other things about it. And then keep taking steps back and you learn more and more and more and more about everything around you. And it's a beautiful thing. I know I talk about perspective a lot, and once you truly understand that everything is based off of your perception, everything is based off of your perspective on how things work, how things interact. If you change up how you view and whatever that perspective is, how you perceive it, then it changes the complete reality of it. I view things from that different wavelength, that different frequency. People might say different dimension, different reality. Get where I'm going with this? So, looking through all the different perspectives and seeing all the different wavelengths, frequencies, vibrations, however you want to put this, you get a wider view of the world, less biased. And it's interesting that all this is happening. We're reading this book called Designing the Mind. And it talks about, like, in the beginning, about getting rid of your biases and to get to like the truth of things, because your bias colors how you respond to things, how you think about things. And the book is about trying to develop your mind to basically optimize it to how you want to think, optimize it in the best way for you in your life by changing up how you think, by changing up the processes of how you respond, how you act on things. And I've only read a little bit of it, so I can't really, tell you the full things about it. I've really just started it, but it made me start thinking about, like, truly, like, perspective. That's where this whole video came from. How this whole podcast today or episode, I don't know what it's going to be. This whole video right here actually started from, because that idea. It's like, how do I perceive things? How do I think about things? What biases do I have? And how far do you really want to take it? Because you could just take it to a base physical plane, or plane, or whatever. But if you want to take it to and apply it to complete reality, say, do you have a bias of how you view reality? The answer is yes. Everybody has a bias on how they view reality. I don't care who you are. You can't say that you don't have a bias on. Well, you can say it. Obviously, you can say it, but it won't be true. And I know people are like, oh, well, that's, again, focusing on one side of it. You're saying that, oh, it can't be true. Well, yeah, because you're looking at it from such a small perspective. Because if you're looking at it from a wider perspective, you wouldn't even be tripping about none of that, because you know that everything is multifaceted and has multiple different reasons and energies and different things that it has going on. That's why you even tripping about that. Like, when you really start to think and look into how you perceive the world, how the world perceives you, because that affects how you perceive stuff too. And that's where people might say the matrix, the system, powers that be, whatever you want to say. You say that's how you are controlled. It's because that colors your perspective on what's going on. Well, again, once you start to widen how you view your perception, and you start to see all these different frequencies and vibrations and wavelengths of how you view the world, that stuff doesn't really matter. Because what are they controlling? Are they controlling that one little perspective? What does that really matter in the long run? Keep that shit pushed, because it's just one small part of the whole thing. And why are you worried about that? There ain't no reason to worry about none of that. And that's why I say everything comes down to your perspective. And this episode could go on forever, because when you talk about perspective, you can talk about everything, because everything comes down to your perspective. Even what are you focusing in on? You're focusing in on with this physical reality. Oh, how the things around you are solid or whatever. When you think about, okay, astral projection, now you're focusing in on a different part of yourself, you're focusing on a different frequency, different vibration, different wavelength of this reality. Or you can say it's a different reality, whatever, but it's of this reality still. And once you start to truly think about it in that manner, like, so what you're saying is now you're viewing this as all the stuff that you thought was solid. You can just walk through based off of how you change what you focused in on. Focusing in on a different pixel now. This pixel has totally different rules of the same thing because it's still all part of that same bigger picture. So it is what it is. Even though you're seeing a totally different aspect of it. That's like somebody who grew up in a small city in the middle of the United States. All of a sudden, you place them in the middle of the desert or in the middle of, say, middle of the jungle somewhere in another country. It's still Earth, still the same place. You just now you're seeing a different area of it. It really is a small part of the Earth. It might seem big to you. There's a lot to explore around in that area, but it's still just a small part of the Earth. It's a small part of that country. It's probably a small part of that city. It's definitely a small part of that continent. So think about that. Even just perceiving things in that manner. That's why, when things really come up and there's like issues or problems and things that you're trying to figure out and learn, like, all that shit really don't matter like that because it's all truly small. Now, is it a small part of something bigger? Maybe. Or it might just be a little small, insignificant thing. And that's for you to go through and figure out. And that's why you hone how you perceive things and look at things and see the different perspectives of it. Because then you can explore and find out the truth for yourself. It's not nobody else's truth. It's your truth. Can't nobody change that for you. Can't nobody do that. Perspective. It it's like it truly is one of the biggest bases that people say everything is love. Well, even that is a perspective, one part of everything. And once you start to understand that there's multiple sides of everything, I say multiple sides because most people like to say, oh, there's two sides, flip sides of the coin and all that. Well, it's still just based off of this physical reality that we're experiencing. So there's multiple sides to everything. There's so many sides to everything that once you start to truly look into things, and it's not even like you got to really look into things. It's when you start to accept more, because that's really what happens when you get to see wider perspectives, because you accept that pixel for what it is. So now you can kind of step back because you're not worried about that no more. That's not your focus. If you think about anything in life, that's like your focus. What you be focusing on is You'll be really determined and focused on it in that moment. And then after you learned everything about it, you dealt with all of it, and now it's not really a concern anymore. You kind of forget about it. You start looking at other things. Now you get to see what else is going on out here because you're not worried about that one thing anymore. That's not your focus anymore. You let go of that. That's why a lot of people in the spiritual community, the woke community, or anything really, they'll talk about letting go. Even scientific and intellectual community. It's like you gotta empty your cup before you can fill it up. You got to, forget your biases in order to learn the truth. That's like I mean, that's a thing. That's a common theme in a lot of things. Like when you truly think about it, you have to let go in order to truly receive. Once you let go of whatever you're holding on to, thinking that that's going to get you where you're going to go, that's when you start to get your true blessings. That's when you start to get all these different things in your life. So you got to let go of all the bullshit in order to get the things that you really want. It's not even things that you really want, things that you really need. It's not even things that you really need. It's the different experience that you moved into, the different frequency, the different wavelength, the different energy, the different reality. You get where I'm going with this? How your perspective covers almost everything. Not even almost everything, like everything. And it's not even just your perspective. That's why they say a master of anything has mastered the basics of it. You got to learn things from the most simple aspect where to build up from it. Most complex things are built from the smallest of items, the smallest of atoms, molecules, all built up into something complex and grand. And once you understand energy at its basics, that's when you're not worried about that anymore. You see it from a wider perspective. And I say energy because everything is energy. And when you look at your perspective of the world and you let go of that bias of what it is, you're able to see those different frequencies, those different wavelengths, and that wider picture of the world. Hmm. It's an amazing journey that we're on. It really is. This is just one aspect. Now, it might be a big aspect if you want to perceive it that way, but it's still just one aspect. And I could literally talk forever about this, but just know that when you start to truly look into your perspective and how you perceive and your viewpoint and the information that's inputted into you, you're going to start to see that there's all kinds of different ways to view the world. There's all kinds of different ways to interact with the world. And once you start to understand, overstand that, and get into that information, there's so much more going on. There's so much more beauty, understanding, compassion, there's so much more to the reality around you. There's so much more to just hear. So the only way I can put it is just here. Because people are like, oh, I asked to project, or I went to this other dimension or whatever. Did you really go anywhere? You did. Did you change your perspective? So then you were somewhere else. Huh. Think about that. That's why I say perspective. It's one of those things that get you thinking. And it'll make you question so much. And all these questions are usually really good for your growth. The only time it's not good for your growth is when you don't take the time to look into why you're questioning and see where that question leads you to get a wider perspective, to get more of the picture. And it's really to get more of this one little pixel that you're looking at right now. Because again, once you get enough information on that one little pixel and it's not your focus anymore, then you can start focusing on the other ones. So really, this comes down to letting go of your biases of how you view things and how you focus in on just one aspect of things. Start focusing in and not even focusing in. Zoom out a little bit. We ain't got to zoom in on everything no more. Everything doesn't need to be under the microscope and everything doesn't need to be, researched and all that. Sometimes you just got to accept it for what it is. But that's about it for today. Appreciate all y'all for listening to me and my perspective on perspective. And hopefully it sparks something inside of you. Because that's what I want. I just want to spark something inside of you. That's why it's Traversing Life with TK. You traverse life with me. As I'm thinking about things and going through things, y'all gonna see about it too. Y'all gonna see my perspective on it as I learn things. And if you guys start checking out my channels, you're gonna start to see the growth, the adaptation, the way I apply these different perspectives, and just how I'm growing on the journey as well. So my perception, how I perceive the world, how I take it in. Because some people might take the situation that I'm in and be like, oh man, like, why would you be in a situation like that? Are you really okay? I'm actually looking great. I am following my dreams and not only just my dreams, my intuition, my instincts, following source, God, creation, however you want to put it, and doing what I truly feel is right in every moment. And I feel that everything is working out, regardless of what it might physically look like. Because again, there's all these different perspectives of it. But that's about it for tonight, y'all. Uh, Appreciate you again. Thank you for tuning in and viewing this with me. Traversing Life with TK. We out here.